They never raise their voice, yet everyone listens. They never chase, yet everyone pursues them. They never explain, yet everyone understands their power. What separates these people from the rest isn't luck, charisma, or privilege. It's their mastery of dark psychology principles that most will never understand. These aren't tricks or manipulations. They're fundamental laws of human behavior that the powerful have used for centuries to command respect, influence decisions, and become utterly unstoppable. Today, you're about to learn 10 of these principles, and by the end of this video, you'll never see human interaction the same way again. Principle 1. The scarcity effect. Become rare, become priceless. Here's a truth that will change how you show up in the world. People don't value what's always available. They crave what's restricted, limited, and just out of reach. This is the scarcity effect, and it's one of the most powerful psychological forces in existence. Think about it. When a product says only 2 left in stock, your brain screams at you to buy it immediately. When someone you're interested in becomes less available, suddenly they're all you can think about. This isn't coincidence. It's hardwired into human psychology. Research shows that scarcity triggers loss aversion, a cognitive bias where the fear of losing something becomes more powerful than the desire to gain it. The unstoppable understand this deeply. They limit their availability strategically. They don't respond to every text immediately. They don't attend every meeting. They don't say yes to every request. Why? Because when your presence becomes predictable, it loses power. When you're always accessible, you become ordinary. Here's how to apply this. Start controlling your accessibility. Create boundaries around your time. When someone requests your attention, don't immediately surrender it. Let there be a pause, a moment of uncertainty. Make people earn your time, your energy, your presence, not out of arrogance, but out of self-respect. And watch what happens. People will start to value your input more. Your opinions will carry more weight. Your time will become something people compete for rather than expect. But here's the critical part. Scarcity must be real, not fabricated. Don't create fake unavailability. Actually become valuable enough that your time genuinely is limited. That's when scarcity transforms from a tactic into reality. Principle 2. Reciprocity, the invisible debt. Human beings hate feeling indebted. It's almost painful for us. This is why reciprocity might be the most powerful influence weapon in existence. When someone gives you something, anything, your brain immediately creates a psychological ledger. You now owe them, and you'll go to surprising lengths to settle that debt. Robert Cialdini, who spent decades researching influence, found that reciprocity is so powerful that it overrides personal preference. In studies, people agreed to requests from individuals they disliked simply because that person had done them a small favor earlier. The unstoppable use reciprocity deliberately. They give first, not randomly but strategically. They offer help before it's asked for. They provide value before requesting anything in return. They create the psychological debt. Then later, when they need something, that debt gets called in. But here's where most people fail. They give and immediately ask for something back. That destroys the power of reciprocity. The real masters plant seeds. They give genuine value with no immediate expectation, creating a psychological imbalance that the recipient feels compelled to correct, often when it matters most to you. Want to use this ethically? Start offering value freely. Share your expertise. Make introductions. Provide assistance. Build a network of people who feel they owe you something, not through manipulation, but through genuine helpfulness. When you eventually need support, you'll find doors opening that would otherwise remain closed. Principle 3. Anchoring. Control the first impression. Control everything. Your brain is lazy. It takes mental shortcuts constantly to save energy. One of the most powerful shortcuts is anchoring, the tendency to rely heavily on the first piece of information we receive. Here's how insidious this is. If I ask you whether Gandhi died before or after age 140, and then ask you to estimate his actual age at death, your answer will be higher than someone who was first asked whether he died before or after age 9. Even though both questions contain obviously wrong information, they anchor your perception. The unstoppable weaponize this ruthlessly. In negotiations, they throw out the first number and make it extreme. Why? Because that number, no matter how unreasonable, becomes the anchor point for everything that follows. All subsequent discussions orbit around that initial reference point. In job interviews, they mention an impressive previous salary before discussing compensation. In business proposals, they present the most expensive option first, making everything else seem reasonable by comparison. In arguments, they establish their frame first, forcing others to respond on their terms. Here's your application. Always control the anchor. Whether you're negotiating salary, setting project timelines, or even deciding where to eat dinner, put your number or preference out there first. Make it slightly higher than what you actually want, giving yourself negotiating room while setting a favorable anchor. The person who sets the anchor controls the conversation. Principle 4. Framing. The reality you present becomes the reality they accept. The same information can create completely opposite reactions depending on how it's presented. A medical procedure with a 90% survival rate sounds far more appealing than one with a 10% mortality rate, even though they're identical. This is framing, and it's how the powerful shape perception without changing facts. They don't lie. They simply choose which aspect of truth to highlight. Research shows that when options are framed as gains, people become risk-averse, choosing the sure thing. But when identical options are framed as losses, people become risk-seeking, choosing the gamble. The frame determines the decision, not the actual substance. The unstoppable are master framers. When presenting ideas, they don't just dump information, they craft narratives. They emphasize benefits over features. They highlight what you'll lose rather than what you'll gain, because loss aversion is twice as powerful psychologically. Imagine you're pitching a project. Instead of saying, "This will increase revenue by 15%, you frame it as, "We're currently leaving 15% of potential revenue on the table every month." Same fact, completely different psychological impact. The second version triggers loss aversion, making action feel urgent. Your move. Before presenting any information, ask yourself, what frame makes my position strongest? How can I present this truth in a way that aligns with how people naturally make decisions? Control the frame, and you control the outcome. Principle 5. Commitment and consistency. The foot in the door technique. Once someone commits to something, even something small, they feel psychological pressure to act consistently with that commitment. This bias is so strong that it can make people continue bad decisions just to avoid appearing inconsistent. This is the foot in the door technique, and it's devastatingly effective. Research shows that if you get someone to agree to a small request, they're far more likely to agree to a larger related request later. Why? Because saying yes to the small thing changed how they see themselves. They become, in their own mind, the kind of person who does this sort of thing. Classic study. Researchers called homeowners asking if they'd answer a few questions about household products. 3 days later, they asked if 5 or 6 men could come into their homes for 2 hours to catalog everything. Those who'd agreed to the small initial request were more than twice as likely to agree to the massive intrusion. The unstoppable use this constantly. They don't ask for everything at once. They start with small commitments that feel reasonable, then gradually escalate. Each yes makes the next yes easier because people want to remain consistent with their previous choices. Want to use this? Never lead with your biggest ask. Start small. Get initial agreement on principles or minor points. Once someone has committed, especially publicly, they'll rationalize larger commitments to maintain consistency with their initial position. This works in sales, relationships, project management, everywhere. But remember, this works both ways. Be aware when others are using it on you. That harmless initial agreement might be setting you up for much larger commitments you don't actually want. Principle 6. Social proof. Weaponize the herd. Humans are pack animals. When uncertain, we look to others to determine correct behavior. This is social proof, and it's why laugh tracks work, why long restaurant lines attract more customers, and why testimonials sell products. Studies show that we're most influenced by social proof when we're uncertain and when the people we're observing seem similar to us. The unstoppable exploit both factors ruthlessly. They create the appearance of consensus. They drop names of others who've already agreed. They manufacture scarcity by showing high demand. Everyone else is doing this becomes a powerful psychological trigger that bypasses rational analysis. Think about how Amazon displays X number of people bought this in the past month, right next to the purchase button. That's weaponized social proof. They're not just telling you the product is good. They're showing you that people like you have already made this decision. Your application. When advocating for anything, don't just present your argument. Show that others, preferably people your audience respects or relates to, have already accepted it. Collect testimonials, mention names, create the perception that the smart, successful, or popular choice is your choice. People will follow because following feels safe. Principle 7. Authority, the automatic obedience trigger. People are hardwired to obey authority figures. The Milgram experiments proved this disturbingly well. Ordinary people delivered what they believed were lethal electric shocks simply because someone in a lab coat told them to. Authority creates automatic compliance. When someone with perceived expertise or status makes a request, our critical thinking diminishes. We assume they know better, so we follow. The unstoppable build authority deliberately. They acquire credentials, titles, and visible markers of expertise. They speak with certainty even when uncertain. They reference other authorities to boost their own credibility. They understand that authority is often performative. It's not just what you know, but what others believe you know. Here's the dark truth. You don't need to actually be the greatest expert. You just need to appear authoritative. Use technical language. Display credentials prominently. Reference research. Speak in declarative statements rather than hedging with "I think" or "maybe." People will defer to your authority without questioning whether it's deserved. Your move. Build your authority profile. Get certifications. Write about your expertise. Speak at events. Create content demonstrating knowledge. When you communicate, do it from a position of authority. People follow leaders who project confidence and expertise. Principle 8. The contrast principle. Manipulate perception through comparison. Your brain doesn't evaluate things in absolute terms. It evaluates them relative to what came before. This is the contrast principle, and it's why that $2,000 tie seems reasonable when you just bought a $10,000 suit. Research demonstrates this brutally. Put one hand in ice water and the other in hot water, then put both in lukewarm water. The hand from the ice water feels hot. The hand from the hot water feels cold. Same water, opposite perceptions. Reality didn't change. Context did. The unstoppable manipulate context deliberately. Car salespeople show you the expensive models first, making the mid-range option seem affordable by comparison. Negotiators make outrageous initial demands, making their real position seem reasonable. Marketers show inflated before prices to make discounts seem massive. This is also why the door-in-the-face technique works. Make an unreasonable request that gets rejected, then follow with your real request. The second request seems far more reasonable by comparison, and people feel psychologically compelled to reciprocate your concession. Your application. Control what people compare your offer to. If you're pitching a service, establish an expensive alternative first. If you're negotiating, start with an extreme position so your real position seems moderate. Create contrast that makes your target option shine. Never let people evaluate your offer in isolation. Always provide comparison points that make your position look favorable. The contrast does the selling for you. Principle 9. Emotional detachment. Command through calm. Emotion is the easiest way to control someone. That's why most people live as emotional puppets, constantly manipulated through fear, anger, desire, and anxiety. The unstoppable refuse to play this game. Emotional detachment isn't coldness. It's control. It's the ability to feel everything while showing nothing. When you stop reacting emotionally, you become unpredictable. And unpredictability is power. Think about negotiations. The person who needs the deal more loses. The person who shows desperation loses. The person who remains emotionally neutral, who can walk away without flinching, wins. Always. This applies everywhere. In relationships, the person who cares less controls the dynamic. In business, the party less attached to the outcome dictates terms. In conflicts, the person who stays calm while others spiral has already won. Psychology research confirms this. Emotional detachment reduces vulnerability to manipulation. When you're not emotionally invested in outcomes, traditional pressure tactics fail. Guilt trips don't work. Fear tactics don't work. Emotional appeals bounce off. Your application. Practice emotional discipline. Feel your emotions privately, but present a calm exterior strategically. Don't let others see your desperation, your anger, your fear. These are weapons they'll use against you. Master your reactions, and you master your outcomes. Train yourself to pause before responding emotionally. That pause is where power lives. While others react impulsively, you respond strategically. That difference is everything. Principle 10. Strategic silence, the weapon of absence. Most people fear silence. They rush to fill it with words, explanations, justifications. This is weakness. The unstoppable understand that silence is one of the most powerful weapons in human interaction. Strategic silence works on multiple levels. In negotiations, the person who speaks first after an offer usually loses. That silence creates pressure, and whoever breaks first makes concessions. In relationships, silence, specifically withdrawal of attention, creates anxiety and obsession. When you go silent strategically, the other person's mind fills that void with worst-case scenarios. They pursue you to resolve the uncertainty you created. Research on the silent treatment shows it's devastatingly effective because it triggers primal fears of abandonment and social rejection. The person being ignored experiences actual psychological pain comparable to physical pain. But here's the key. Strategic silence is not the same as childish sulking or passive aggression. It's deliberate, calculated, and purposeful. You go silent to create strategic advantage, not to punish emotionally. Your application. Get comfortable with silence. In conversations, don't rush to fill pauses. Let silence do work for you. After making an offer, stay silent. Let the other person process and respond first. When someone makes an unreasonable demand, don't immediately argue. Let silence communicate your disapproval. Learn to withdraw strategically. When your attention no longer creates the response you want, remove it completely. Make your absence felt. People value what they fear losing, and nothing makes them fear loss like sudden silence from someone previously engaged. The final truth. These 10 principles aren't about manipulation in the negative sense. They're about understanding the psychological architecture of influence that already exists. Every single day, these forces operate around you. In advertising, in politics, in your relationships, in every human interaction. The question isn't whether these principles will be used. The question is, will they be used on you, or will you master them yourself? The unstoppable aren't unstoppable because they're smarter, richer, or luckier. They're unstoppable because they understand these dark psychology principles and apply them with precision and discipline. They've stopped being reactive subjects in other people's influence games and become strategic architects of their own outcomes. Now you have the blueprint. Whether you use it ethically or not is your choice. But understand this, these principles work. They've worked for thousands of years. They'll continue working long after you're gone. The only question is whether you'll harness them consciously or remain unconsciously subject to them. Welcome to the game. Now go play it better than everyone else.